Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees and Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Mayor Andrew Muffle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lisa Skumatz.
Here.
Trustees Joe Cirelli.
Here.
Dana D'Souza.
Here.
Julia Gregoris.
Here.
Eric Rosenfeld.
Present.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randall.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Paul Sargent here.
Thank you. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? I have one. Let's see. I'd like to just talk about 6D after the consent agenda. Any other changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Gregoris. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 4, public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items.
Well, it's 4444 South Third Avenue. I just want to make sure the public will have opportunity to comment on item number 8 at the time.
Additional public comment? George?
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Sorry I missed the last meeting, but I watched it on TV, and I'll plug that we don't want home rule, Mr. Mayor, since you plugged that we did. It's been defeated
Sounds fair.
twice before already, so let's get our gloves on. I'm serious.
I'm not much of a boxing man, but it'll be a good discussion to have.
I want to ask the mayor and the board, whatever. We put over $5 million in this bridge over here. Well, I don't know exact amount, but I was told over 5.
The
Louisville was...
The interchange. I just want to make sure that people know what we're talking about. The interchange over 36.
McCaslin
Yeah.
Bridge. Louisville was supposed to do something with the north end. It's been a couple of years now. Is this water under the bridge we're going to forget about, or are we going to do something about it? That corner has had wreck after wreck after wreck, and I think it's time that this board gets with the Louisville board and gets taken care of.
6F.
6F, yeah.
Yep.
Getting it taken care of, yeah, with the board.
It's a-
With the north side,
Right.
where it goes to turn off to goes to Boulder. Oh, you all understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, it's on the agenda tonight.
It's addressed tonight, partly.
So
What
yeah,
number?
6F.
6F. So let me just give you an update. So, George, your memory is obviously completely accurate that...
Well, I see it every day.
Yes.
And I see how close people come getting killed.
So on,
An issue for all of us.
I'm sorry.
so on this side that we put the loop in, basically from residents coming
Well,
from
if they
Louisville.
move that north,
Correct.
100 feet would take care of the whole situation and not millions of dollars.
And
You know,
we've been
that
trying
could-
to- right.
Corner could be filled in since the state owns it,
Right. So we...
or town, or whoever.
The town's desire has been to put another on-ramp on the other side. We've had discussions with our friends in Louisville that have
Well, it's in the
been
progress.
problematic.
It's in the
So we are
progress.
working on it, yes.
Okay. On your executive session, and I want to say it right now because maybe I'm not here, I'd like you to bring this town manager's salary out in the open and bring it on the board, not in the back room. Please. I sit here meeting, and I'd like to hear something about that some way or the other.
So the attorney will remind me, but after we make maybe there will be a salary adjustment, I don't know. The board will talk
Well,
about
I
that.
like
But
it
that
in the
will be
open,
an
just put it that
open,
way.
yes, it'll be an
Please.
open public record.
It's public
Please.
record.
I have this thing that's pretty easy.
Okay. Thank you. And you got his address, right?
And what his name was?
George Kuffner, 7520 West Coal Creek Drive. I've got a couple of things that's kind of bothered me a little bit about our Public Works Department. One of them was a couple weeks ago I was contacted from the Public Works Department that the emergency repair on Rock Creek Parkway was given up a little bit, and which it was. We've got some water problems, and we still have them from coming between the asphalt and the road base. But instead of fighting with our Public Works guys, I just went ahead and they were pretty adamant that I was going to warranty that on my own dime, which I figured it was easier to warranty it than to fight with him. But at the same time, by doing that, I feel that he set a standard for some warranty work. We have some very poor patches that have been done in the last 2 years, and if you can take a contractor that lives in your own town, complain one time, he gets right out there and he fixes that warranty work because he don't want to fight with you. Don't you think it's time that we fix the rest of our warranty work before it runs out of warranty, and then we fix it on our own dime again? And the places I'm talking about is at Colton and McCaslin, about 100 yards down. There's a big sinkhole coming. It was fixed once. They didn't do it properly, so it's coming again. The manhole at Rock Creek Parkway and
Indiana?
no, the manhole problem is at Rock Creek Parkway, and the one going into the Horizons.
Oh, yeah, Tyler.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Then again on Colton, on the other side of Tyler, coming in the fast lane, there's a dip there that'll take you out of your seat that needs repaired. Now, if you've got a contractor in town that'll do it, why is he not going after the bigger contractors and having them repaired as fast? I mean, I was summoned to town down here, thought it was a big emergency. They thought they was going to have a big fight. Joe, you seen us out there. There's no big fight. It needed fixed. I fixed it. It's easier to fix it than to fight with him. But now I feel that we do need to fix the rest of them.
How long are the warranties?
Well, you know, on emergency work, sometimes there's not a warranty due to the conditions that you're doing them in. From the contracts that I've been reading and keeping up with, I think the town has pretty much went to like a 2-year warranty.
Typically.
And so I'm pretty sure it's 2 year. I mean, if it's 1 year, but it's somewhere in there in the process, they went to 2 years. So all the holes that I'm talking about, they were in less than a year's time needing to be repaired. We've just been tolerating these holes since. Those 3 need to get fixed. I mean, soon. Otherwise, we're going to be fixing them on our own dime. The other thing that we need to do is West Coal Creek here. I don't know if it's out of warranty yet or not. We sure hope it's not. Those guys need to come back in and fix it right. If you drive up West Coal Creek, you'll see where they've patched, and we're starting to get sinkholes where they've patched again. That's due to poor compaction when they put it in from a lack of inspection. And we should not let the warranty time run out. And a brand new piece of pavement like that shouldn't look like that. We should have never accepted it with all the Band-Aids on it. We should have made them rotomill it and repair it properly, not just keep sticking Band-Aid after Band-Aid on it. So I think that our Public Works Department needs to get after everybody, not just one contractor. So I've talked to them about it, and I was told they'd look at it, but it's been 2 weeks. And I know that it didn't take me 2 weeks after I got the phone call. You know, I got the phone call one day, the following week it was fixed. So, I mean, if you can get that out of an in-town contractor, you got to be able to get that out of anybody. And if not, we ought to be using an in-town contractor to get that kind of service. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do appreciate your service. So. Additional public comment? Okay. Item number 5, presentations, and the first one is the Arbor Day Awards. Ms. Dominguez, Director Dominguez, would you like to introduce this?
Juanita Dominguez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. As part of the annual Arbor Day celebration, we offer a poster contest. This year was the 4th annual poster contest. This year's theme was Trees Are Terrific in Cities and Towns. We had over 92 contestants, ages K through 8, Superior Elementary, Monarch Elementary, and
El Dorado.
El Dorado, K through 8. This year's submission was a joint submission by 4 young ladies through Monarch, K through 8, and they're here this evening to receive an award from the mayor. They received this picture on T-shirt. We made over 100 and some odd copies of the T-shirt, so their wares are throughout the town. They've received those so far, but tonight we wanted to have the opportunity for the mayor to give them a certificate and a photo op.
Great.
So if you could come down here.
I'd love to, and give me a little of discretion if I butcher your name. So the winners were Sienna Stonesmith, Anna Trick, Abby Goosen, Delaney Collins. And I think this is one of the, the great things about being mayor. There's a lot of upsides, a lot of downsides, but this is one of the coolest things. I love Arbor Day, and unfortunately I couldn't be there this year. And Trustee Gregoris, I think you were there. And I heard great things about it.
It was great.
Yeah. So.
It was cold.
It's cold. Yes, exactly. Well, with that, let's do the presentations.
Let's start off first with Sienna Stonesmith. And Sienna, why don't you stand over there in the corner for a minute, and then we'll get a group picture. Anna Trick.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Abby Goosen.
I was worried I was going to weird that side. Thanks.
And Delaney Collins.
And on television as well. Thank you. I might make it.
There you go, right there. We got more, yeah, we got more. Being a parent, I know. Yes. All right. And it's a great design. And when will we be seeing the T-shirts around town?
They're out.
They're about right now.
When do I get mine?
It's true.
Excellent.
All the
Well,
finalists hanging up here in
Great.
the lobby, too.
thank you very much. And if you want to stay for the auditor's report, you're certainly welcome to do so.
Yeah, that'd be good.
A lot of takers on that.
Well, I think the auditor's report is great, too. All right, well, with that, let's go to item 5B, which is the presentation by the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and the Auditor's Management Report by Swanhurst and Company. And welcome. Mr. Nillis, do you want to, or Mr. Randall? Anybody? Dueling?
Wendy, the managing partner for Swanhorse, is here. She's going to make a short presentation and then answer any questions that the board might have. Just as an introductory comment, it was referenced during our workshop session, but we've received, again, an unqualified opinion, and on top of the unqualified opinion, a management letter saying there were no findings, both of which are an incredible testimony to the finance department, specifically Paul Nillis and Jeff Stone, who run a great operation. I hope you'll appreciate the effort that went in, both to the preparation of the report, but their diligence in the annual oversight of the finance department. A number of particulars, but I'm guessing it'll come out either in Wendy's presentation or in the board's questions, so I won't go into any of the highlights.
Great, thanks. Welcome. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Well, I've got with me the copy of your 2008 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, better known as the CAFR, to us, and then I think you all got a copy of the management letter that Scott referred to. So I won't go into a lot of detail on the CAFR, but the management letter goes through what we did and what the results of our audit were. So we work for you guys as the board, and our job is to tell you that the numbers in this CAFR are fairly stated in all material respects. And you did get an unqualified opinion, which means that, in our opinion, they were fairly stated in all material respects. The other part of our audit that we're required to tell you about is if we see any issues, especially if we do significant adjustments to your books, or there are issues that aren't resolved during the year, and then if there are any significant deficiencies that we notice in your internal controls, and that would simply mean that your internal controls are not adequate to make sure that those numbers are fairly stated. And as Scott mentioned, we've talked about all of those issues in this management letter, but they have no comments or recommendations in this letter. And the finance department does do a good job. We didn't make any adjustments this year to your books. So really everything was in good order. As far as the financial condition goes, I won't go through a lot of detail, as I said, because I know this is kind of a thick document, but your financial condition is improved from last year, and essentially that means that the equity you had last year is higher this year than it was last year. So no real financial issues from our standpoint either in this report. So that's all pretty good news. I think maybe, I know you guys have had a chance to look at this, I think maybe I'll just take questions if you have any.
Great. Questions from the board?
I don't know if you've seen trends coming up that we ought to worry about.
I don't know if there are any trends. Generally we don't deal in the future.
I know, I was trying. Doing my best.
The economy always comes up, and as you look at things like, the building-related revenues are down, and so the sales taxes are down, and I'm sure you're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, but really other than that, nothing. I don't think that we have big concerns about it.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Randall, did you have anything that you wanted to point out?
The numbers can be boring, but a couple of the takeaways as I was going through. Net assets are up $2.3 million. We paid down debt more than $2 million last year, with the exception of one of our operating funds, and there are about 13. Of the 13, 12 were in the black. The general fund, about $65,000 in the black, with expenditures about $500,000 under budget. So even though revenues didn't perform like we expected last year, and they aren't performing as we expected so far this year, we managed it. The proof is here in this document. And then the report on your fund balances, and it ties in the segue between what we talked about during the discussion session with fund reserve policies and all of the rest. But the fact that you're sitting on a $7 million fund balance in the general fund when general fund expenditures are approximately $10 million, you're at your goal of 75%, and an incredibly good cushion in case of a catastrophic event. And I could say the same thing in almost every one of your other funds, the landscaping fund and the open space fund, and even the ability to set aside reserves for the interchange phase 2 of the interchange improvements and future open space purchases. Again, the proof is here. You see where the money's at. We're in a very, very strong financial condition.
So a question for the manager. So it's not related to your outstanding report, and congratulations to the finance department for outstanding work. Can you give us, are there any updates on sales tax generation?
We've only received sales tax information through the month of February. We should be receiving March any day now. It's typically the 14th to the 19th of the month, so we should be receiving it hopefully within the next week and have a third month in which to report. Through 2 months, we are exactly flat, right where we were at the year before. That information included 3 of our top 30 sales tax generators that did not file their February sales tax reports on time. So we've got a little bit of a cushion. None of the biggies, but 3 of our top 30 were not included in that number. Conversely, we've heard numbers ranging from 6% in Louisville to double-digit in almost every other metropolitan community within the Front Range, where their sales tax dollars are down for the first couple of months of 2009. So again, we seem to be weathering it better than most. We also reported on vehicle use tax, another very large generator. The first 2 months were woefully down, almost 40%. We've started to see a rebound in March and April. We have received more current data on those numbers. We're still down, but not nearly as bad as we were in the first couple of months. And whether that's attributable to the economic stimulus and the change in the incentive, the tax incentives available for new car purchases, but we've seen a strong rebound, and again, much better than most of our neighbors. So we're cautiously optimistic, and we expect to be bringing, Paul and I talked earlier in the week, or late last week, about coming back to the board with a supplemental presentation on current year financial condition. And we want to do that giving us a couple more months. So probably by the end of June, we'll be coming back and saying, this is what we told you in February when we did the contingency budget and all of the expenditure reductions. And here's the current condition, and based on these, either we need to make other steps, or maybe there were some things that we curtailed that we'll be able to let loose again. And again, we'd expect to have that for you by the end of June.
Very good. Trustee Skumatz?
I just, given the year, is it a lot harder to do it quarterly for us?
You still get your quarterly, and you did get a quarterly report, but I wanted to be aware that March, the report you received in early April representing January, February, and March still doesn't include March sales tax. And even on the 11th of May, I can't give you March sales tax data yet.
I meant updating us. Okay.
We can do that with whatever frequency you'd like.
Great. Anything else from the board? If not, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And congratulations once again to our finance department.
Finance Department.
There we go. Okay, let's see. With that, we're on to item number 6 of the consent agenda, and remaining on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes for the April 27th, 2009 meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Historical Commission meeting, final approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 18 of the Superior Municipal Code regarding building regulation, E, adoption of a resolution approving a change in sales tax vendor fees, F, appointment of library representatives and appointments to the Louisville Superior Interchange Committee, and adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Facility Solutions Group for parking lot LED lighting upgrades. Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Rosenfeld. Further discussion?
I have a question on 6G, the LED lighting. So, in terms of warranty, I see that we have kind of warranty from defects and workmanship and so on for 2 years. But I actually had a question about the actual lighting themselves. They're supposed to last for how long? Like 10 years, 20 years, something ridiculous like that?
Yeah, industry standard is 10 years.
Do we have any warranty against the actual light that lasts beyond 2 years?
The
bulbs or
Like the
whatever.
bulbs
themselves?
Essentially, well, it's not so much the light, the actual LEDs, it's the electronics that I'm worried about.
Oh,
Given all the problems that people have been having with CFLs, the low quality, the fact that they don't last any longer than incandescents, I worry about buying LEDs just from a reliability standpoint. How proven are they? How long is that warranty going to last? Given their expense in replacement, even if a couple fail, it's a lot of
it
money.
can add up, definitely. So what we have from the manufacturer is a 5-year
Okay.
on the lights.
And that's standard? Okay.
And with the expectation of a lifespan of 10 years.
Yeah.
So there is a 5-year gap there. But I don't have information on what the replacement schedule for the lights we have now, but I can get that to you if you'd like to.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the lifespan of our existing lights?
Institute lifespan,
Yeah.
not the...
I'll get it to you.
Trustee Skumatz.
One other question I had about LEDs, and I know their technology is quite a bit different from everything else that's out there, but is there any worry that they're going to have any kind of lessening of light output over their lifetimes? I worry, about how lights get dimmer and dimmer, incandescence and so on. I don't think LEDs are supposed to do that. I think they're supposed to sort of 1-0, but I'm not sure if that's true or not, and I wondered if we knew if that we might have an issue with that.
What we've heard from the manufacturer is, as they get later in life, you see about a 30% decrease. So when you get closer to the 8, 9, 10-year range, you'll start to see a little bit less of a light output.
Is incandescent worse than that?
I don't know.
It might be interesting to know that as well. Thanks.
Additional, goodness gracious. Additional questions, Trustee Williams?
This isn't a question, I just want to make sure that I abstain from the minutes on
Me too.
the April 27th meeting.
Ditto.
Duly noted and dittoed.
Alrighty.
All right. Phyllis, if you would.
D'Souza?
Yes.
Cirilli?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Rosenfeld?
Aye.
Buckle?
Yes.
Gregorus?
Yes. All right, thank you very much. That motion carries. And let's move to, let's see, Mayor Muckle, that was 6D. And I was wondering if, Mr. Randall, if we could, basically my question about the urban drainage in Coal Creek is what is the long-term plan for Second Street Avenue Bridge? It was referenced in here, but I couldn't quite tell what was planned.
Yes,
And welcome, you are?
my name is John Hawkins, Director of Public Works for the Town of Superior.
Thanks.
What you have before you is a agreement with Urban Drainage to really take the first steps. There were some preliminary studies, conceptual design work done on what can be done with Coal Creek, looking at different sections upstream of US 36. One reach being from US 36 to McCaslin, the second from McCaslin to Second Avenue Bridge, and then upstream of Second Avenue Bridge. What we came to a discussion about is really to focus on upstream of McCaslin because we are under some expectations that when Town Center develops, something will be done there. We can deal with that through development. Part of that preliminary study, one of the determinations was made that Second Avenue Bridge creates an obstruction to the flow and can create some back flooding, and it would need to be increased capacity. That means make it a longer, wider bridge to allow more flow underneath it. This investigation, this would look at different ways that can be done, whether it's a complete replacement or just adding some additional culvert capacity under the roadway on one side or the other or both, different things like that. So the agreement that you have is really to start that process, drill down. We have in general what the options are and what we can do, what makes sense to do. And then this next step is to get to the specifics of what do we want to do, what can we afford to do, honestly.
Okay. And that report should be within 12 months or so?
Yes.
Is that sort of the timeline?
Right. This is, like I say, just to get the ball rolling, get a specific outline of things that the town wants to work towards, begin the public involvement process, that sort of thing. There may be a phase 2 to this once we identify, option A versus option B, things like that. But you will have progress reports and a better idea of costs down the road.
And is this a typical 50-50 split with urban drainage in the town?
Yes, it is.
And the town's contribution, I didn't see that on the
this
resolution.
particular one is $100,000 towards a $200,000 total design project.
Great.
Design only. This is
Design only, yeah.
Does not include any construction funds at this point.
Okay.
And our long-term financial plan includes $1 million in year 2013 as implementation. Now, whether we come up with a plan that is less expensive than that and can be implemented in phases, hopefully. Candidly, our financial forecast does not include $1 million available to pay for it, but we anticipated $1 million as our share of capital expenditures associated with Coal Creek from McCaslin west.
Okay. And typically they are open to looking at trail connections through there. I'm not sure there will be a lot, but that will be part of this planning as well.
Yes, one of the thoughts was to create a maintenance easement and a maintenance trail along there, and that can be a multi-purpose trail. It would not need to be exclusive to urban drainage maintenance. In fact, they like to make a lot of these multi-use trail. So the town has an opportunity to expand its trail system in some connectors.
Okay. 2 remaining questions. So we have, and it's sort of related, but there are a variety of structures in town that are in the floodplain for historical reasons or whatever. And I know that there's been an idea that urban drainage in the town might partner if there was a willing seller to take structures out of the floodplain. Is that still
That's
on our
still
agenda?
one of Urban Drainage's goals and things they will work towards with the town. Yes.
Okay. Last one is, how will this tie into the environmental impact statement for where Coal Creek goes under 36? Will that address that issue at all, about how high 36 might have to be or how wide it would have to be?
No. This project would not get involved with the US 36 bridge. That's being left to the corridor project.
Okay.
The corridor project would benefit Coal Creek as a whole and its flooding issues, but we're letting the corridor deal with that during its environmental impact, and we're working upstream.
Okay. I guess my only, if it's possible, it would be nice if they could look at how high 36 might have to go up.
That's
They
been looked
spend
at
a little bit of
preliminarily.
time, and I think that they're a little aggressive about how much that actually needs to occur. So if there's controlling of flooding on this side of 36, I guess we need to feed that into the 36 corridor
Into the model,
EIS.
right.
Yeah.
I believe each section has been looked at independently because there really wasn't a knowledge of which one was going to be done when, and it kind of left everyone dealing only with the worst-case scenario. As these projects are implemented, yes, it can reduce impacts downstream and adjust what needs to be done there.
Okay, great. Further questions, Trustee Skumas? I saw the pen. I'm still on the chew pen thing. Any other questions? All right, we'll entertain a motion by Trustee Skumas. Well, actually, I should say Director Skumas.
I'd like to move Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Resolution Number SMD 1-4, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 approving an intergovernmental agreement with Urban Drainage and Flood Control District for Coal Creek improvements.
Motion by Director Skumas, second by Director D'Souza. Further discussion regarding this issue. Phyllis?
Gregorius?
Yes.
Markart?
Yes.
Rosenthal?
Yes.
Skuma?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Surratt?
Yes.
D'Souza?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That motion carries. With that, let's move to item number 7, reports, questions, and issues. Why don't we, Mr. Randall, do you want to start out with the e-newsletter and name the newsletter? So we'll go slightly out of order.
Very briefly, we shared with the board a concept well over a month ago, and then they put it on the last 2 workshop sessions. First is a recommendation from staff to transition from the traditional monthly print copy of a town-wide newsletter, which is currently sent to every residential household, every business within the community. And we're suggesting that we make a conversion going to an electronic format, both from an e-efficiency, but also for the quality of the work product. We can save a lot of money, it's green, and we feel we can come up with a better product. Not having the time constraints associated with the traditional going to press by the 15th of the month, getting it to the distributor, getting it to the mailboxes by the first day of the month, and all of a sudden, the information that you've got in there is 2 weeks late. So a number of positives. There's also a transition plan of, 1, how we get there, what we do with the database that we develop, and 2, what happens to those that don't have access to e-technology. So there would be a fallback for those that want to maintain access to a hard copy. We would still produce that. It may not be received by the first day of the month, and we would expect it would be a significant subset of the numbers that are currently distributed through traditional mail. Again, you've seen all the information. We'd like your feedback on the concept, and if so, we'll go ahead. Our target was, when we were hoping to discuss this some weeks ago, of getting it initiated by July. We may not be able to make that now, but with your blessing, we'd be in the next couple of months.
Trustee Skumas.
So I saw a lot of the cost side of this addressed, but the part I didn't see was representative information from other communities about what happens when you go e-newsletter in terms of how many people read it. It's the most read thing. You know, whenever we've done surveys about where do you get your information, one of the number one things is always the newsletter. And having it sort of sitting on your counter or whatever is a lot easier to sort of refer to than, you know, and the kids can pick it up and whatever. And I'm not sure that readership will be the same afterwards. And so I'd really like to see some readership information before we go forward with this. It's a big troublesome issue to me. Communication is really important.
And our thought was, we will find out from our users after we've done it.
But other communities have probably done this. If they have some readership information, I'd sure like to know it.
I wouldn't know who to contact.
So is there aware of, I mean, I'm actually not aware of any communities that actually do this. I know that I get a whole bunch.
California.
Yeah, I mean, maybe out of state. I know that people send me their, Lafayette and Lakewood newsletters for reasons that are
Wheat Ridge and Arvada, and yes,
Yeah.
I'm on the mailing list for many of the print. I haven't done any research on other communities that have done it, but again, we have a different demographic.
Yes.
And the premise was, after some time, whether it's with our next biannual survey or as an element of it, to find out what the reaction was to it. I'm not sure if Dillon or Frisco or Steamboat Springs, if that necessarily would be indicative of how the residents of Superior would accept it, receive it, use it.
Okay.
But that was our thought.
It's just my most important concern.
On a,
Trustee
sorry.
Williams?
okay, on a smaller scale, and you might be interested in that El Dorado K through 8 is now electronic with their newsletter.
So is Monarch.
And so is Monarch. And I happen to know that the people who manage that have actual numbers of who's actually reading it. They get read receipts to see if you've actually opened them. And so they do have stats on that. I don't know if that helps any. It might be at least a starting point, because that's obviously a big portion of our town. So you can at least start there.
Trustee Rosenfeld?
Yeah, I was going to ask, can you talk about the migration plan that you worked out?
One of the things that has come up with my one-on-one meetings with each of the elected officials was what kind of additional communication outreaches, and one of the feedbacks was the money that's being saved, potentially saved through this initiative, gives us the resources to do some of the other things that we've thought about, given thought to move towards. Clearly, the database that gets developed with this, right now we have a database through the town-administered CAC with maybe 400 subscribers. We're looking at having a significantly greater database. We think integrating our recent move to electronic utility bills will significantly move us there, but getting us to the point where we have virtually everybody's email and we can initiate distribution. This process gives us the ability to do what I described as almost like the reverse 911, where we can, through our emergency dispatch center, initiate phone calls by block, by neighborhood, by region, or the entire community to say, here's something of sufficient interest. We can do the same thing electronically once that database develops. So that's one of the things. And the litany of, from a street closure to a special event to a reminder that the warning sirens are going to go off this morning at 10 and tonight at 7, all sorts of things that we can do that we don't have the capacity for today, or at least adding to the arsenal of things. A number of other suggestions of things. We do have and I expect that I'll have information maybe as early as tomorrow at tomorrow morning staff meeting about the introduction of a blog link to the town's existing website. And we've talked about creating actually 3 separate blog links, one for the board members to access so that they can have outreach efforts through the town's website or linked to the town's website, one for the manager to talk about things that maybe from the desk of the manager that you see periodically in the monthly newsletter, but with much greater regularity. And another one from staff. We talked about it as part of our out communications plan for things like capital improvement programs. Just a reminder, you can't park on your street between this hour and this hour because tar is going down, or we've got a water main break, or a number of things. But there may be things from the staff perspective that would be appropriate. So that was one. And I've had 3 or 4 others that I have not had opportunity to share with anybody other than the mayor. But we've talked about the meet and greet. We've talked about creation of what I would call a student government or a shadow day, and creating a linkage through the local high school to have actually students fill all of our roles for a day. So there's a greater appreciation for what the responsibilities are. And in communities where I have done this in the past, it's amazing because sometimes issues come out of that day that we hadn't thought about. Maybe it's smoking, or accessibility to cigarettes, or proper siting of a park or a rec center or a new recreational amenity. And there were a couple of other suggestions along those lines. So using the resources that had previously been devoted to the print media of a monthly newsletter and being able to undertake some of these other initiatives. I had a couple of others I thought you might like, but I'm drawing a blank at the very moment.
So, so I'm highly supportive of a lot of these ideas, just trying ways to get information to residents in a more timely fashion. I think it's fantastic. Do you have, kind of going back to the question about kind of migration plan, do you have an idea of how many people write, like how many just separate residences we have at least one email for?
Oh.
What percentage? Have you looked at any of that?
Maybe 10%.
Okay.
And again, recognizing, this is one of the difficulties with the existing medium that we use, there are about 4,500 households, maybe a little bit more, in Superior. A third of them are rental, and most of them are in one complex. And our reports are, the newsletter does not penetrate. It doesn't get beyond the mailbox. So a third of our outreach effort is lost.
Right. But if we just focus on the other 3,200 or whatever the number is, and just use that as a baseline, because we tend to know rental properties, right, Horizons, they tend not to pay too much attention. So if we just focus on, the non-rental properties, by and large ones that are owned, what percentage do we have there, and how are we going to try and do anything specifically to get people to fill in a postcard and send it back with their email, or
once we have the blessing,
what are we going to do to really get that number up?
Once we have the blessing to proceed, we'll have at least a couple of months of the traditional newsletter and every other medium that we control to facilitate that. I mentioned the two that already exist. We've got the database from the CAC. We're in the process of developing a similar database by those that are subscribing to electronic billing for their monthly utility bills.
Right.
The second one is a relatively recent. I don't know what penetration we've had, but if you take the 400 from the one, if we're at 800, we're at roughly 20% of our households. We want to get to 100%. So give us a couple months through website, newsletter, Channel 8, all of the rest to get them there. And that's why I was hoping that if we talked about it a month ago, we might be able to unveil this in July. Maybe we're in the position of unveiling it in August or September, but after a couple of months of getting additional people to sign up for it. And I also think that we'll get some word of mouth once people start receiving it. And boy, I'd rather get this electronically than waste the paper.
Okay. Is the plan to deliver just through email a PDF document, or are you going to just refer back to the town website through a link that people can then
No, you
open and
don't.
read?
The idea here is that you don't have to retrieve it. It's sent to you. Not telling them that it's available, go to this link. So whether it's a PDF, whether it's the full content in the body of the email, that's more for the technicians to come up with what still looks good and readable and all of that. But my goal was it gets distributed. It's not just a notice that's available somewhere else.
Right.
Making the end user go retrieve it. We lose people going through that process.
Okay. The problem is if you just send a PDF, you can't track who's reading it. If you can send the content in the body of an email, but if there's pictures that they can download, then you can actually pay attention to get real usage numbers. I mean, to Trustee Skumat's point, I do want to be able to understand how we don't have any idea how many people read our newsletters now. So, worst case scenario, we have the same situation. But it would be really nice to see how many people are looking at the information we're putting out and ways we can improve that. So I don't know. From a technology perspective, there's different ways you can do that. So that's what I'm just wondering.
I can't tell you how many people read the newsletter, but
right.
If we send out 4,500 and 500 respond to the community survey,
right,
or you see the flurry of activity the day it gets received about things like we're doing a roundabout, and oh my God, I didn't know about it. Well, people are finding out about it as a result, but is that a subset of 20 people or 2,000 people?
Okay.
Trustee Williams.
Well, there's different programs and different services that you can subscribe to create a newsletter that looks much like your printed newsletter on paper. And it comes in your email literally just as a scroll down. You just scroll down, you see all these beautiful pictures, and as far as downloading, there's no download, there's no links to click, although you could put links to click for further information. And when you click on your email that you get, your newsletter, it gives information to you to say, okay, this particular email address looked at it, and they got this information from it. They may have clicked on this link. I've been told that they can tell if you've read all of it or just looked at it and quickly shut it. So
I don't want them to know that.
Well,
Too much information.
it is. There's a lot of information that they give you on it. It depends on what programs that you go with. But
Yeah, I don't think most of those programs work through email, though. So
well, we do with El Dorado, and we
Yeah.
have those stats.
I'd like to
So
understand. I'm kind of fairly familiar with some of this stuff, so and there's ways to track this. And there's ways to just send it out. So I don't want to track it from the standpoint of knowing individually, did so-and-so read their newsletter, but as in aggregate, I think it's important to understand the effectiveness of this program. My view is I think this is a great idea. I really like the idea of cutting down newspaper and going green in this respect. What I'd be interested in seeing is, can we reach a certain threshold before we completely cut off the paper? So my input would be, let's move forward with trying to get people to subscribe, and we can, start sending them whenever, right? Because they're just PDFs right now. But I don't think we need to make a decision to cut anything off until we've reached a certain threshold, and let's just track it over the next 6 months or something, or whatever, and get some updates and see when we think it makes sense. That's kind of my view.
And I guess I completely agree with that one. We don't want to cut it off and realize that there's a significant segment of the population that's not getting any information. I guess my, I love, maybe I'm the last person who loves reading my New York Times and getting ink on my hands, but I also get it electronically as well. So I know that it can be done very well. So, and I love the concept of not putting more paper in the trash and sending things to people that don't want to, never have read them and still don't want to read them. So I think that there's a whole bunch of upside to this, and hopefully we're on the forefront of this. Trustee Gregoris.
Yeah, and I agree. I overall like this idea, but I think, for example, in July, if we have 1,000 emails, then we send 1,000 out, but the other 4,400, I think we need to do it hard copy still. Maybe in August we go up to 1,500 emails as it continues to grow and we drop the hard copies, but I don't know exactly. Maybe by the end of the year in December we have 2,500 emails. I don't know. We have to realize what's the cutoff. But
We can try, but I do need to be clear that because these are not individually addressed and individually mailed. They're sent parcel post, bulk rate, all addresses.
Okay.
So we don't have the ability to segregate
Right.
until we get to the point of saying, there's a 44-cent stamp and it's going to this particular address.
Right.
That small subset that doesn't have the capacity always wants to get the hard copy. When we make that transition, then it'll only get sent to those that have asked us for it.
Right.
Until that time, everybody gets the hard copy. And for those that have given us their email, they'll get it electronically as well. The difficulty, I don't know that we get the penetration if they know they're getting both. I don't know that you've maximized your penetration electronically when they still know they're going to get the hard copy on their mailbox the first day of the month.
Right.
And we've lost the productivity efficiency that if we're completing it by the 15th of the month to get it in their mailbox by the 30th or the 31st, it might be a different product that they get electronically on the 1st.
Right. There's, I think the important thing is to create value in the online version. So people want to go to it, they look at it as kind of the address of record, it's got the information that they're looking for, as opposed to trying to force it. I think if we create the information, the value will come out of it. I'd love to be able to say, let's just do this in 2 months, because I love the fact that we can take this money and make our online presence even better. But I suspect there'll be a period there where there'll be a lot of people without a lot of information. I'd like to avoid that. So if we can push as hard as we can to get the information, build the database, see where we are, say in 3 months, revisit the question, make a decision. If we're not comfortable waiting another 3 months, push it aggressively.
And I will
We're
hope to
not
have
seeing fruit.
greater information on the utility billing penetration. If we've had 90% participation in that, and that with the
Be a different
CAC,
issue,
we're
right.
at 90+%.
But I mean, just as a closing comment, I love the idea of having blogs and places where people can post information. I think the town should get a Twitter account and start posting through that. Maybe a Facebook account.
That means I have to understand what those things are.
Yeah,
Ask your
exactly.
kids.
But I think it's not too hard to do this extra stuff. It's actually not that much extra work, and I think you get a lot of bang for it because a lot of people are going to start looking at it. So I'd like to see us start doing that as well, kind of figuring that whole piece out.
Trustee Skumatz.
I guess I will try to find out if there are other places that made the transition, because to me, the how many people are going to read it is the most important thing, more important than whether we could save some money. And I think that the incremental cost for us to do it almost duplicate for a while is virtually zero. So in the end, I'm okay for a couple of months to keep doing. I want to keep doing the mail one. I don't know how well we'll be able to build up the database. I wouldn't want to track who's doing what. That completely Big Brother thing just does not appeal to me at all. And I don't know how we'll know who isn't getting it, or how we'll get the word to the people who aren't getting it very, very well. I guess they'll have to contact us to say, I've been getting it forever and I want to keep getting it. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried that some people will be left out. But I'm especially worried that readership may fall. It's possible readership will fall. It's possible readership will go up for those people who hate reading paper, I guess. But I don't know.
But you'll have to track it somehow to know whether people are actually reading it or if it's just junk mail.
Okay. We do have to remember that we have no idea how many people are reading it now. Although we like to think everybody does, doesn't they? I suspect more people don't read it than we.
It just seems to me the first question
So-
to be answered here should have been, and what do we think will happen to readership? That's to me.
Well,
the
but we don't
most
really know
important
what it is now.
thing. At
And
least we should
so-
have made an attempt. We could make an attempt. We could talk to other communities and do something.
No, but we don't know how many people right now are reading our paper
Yeah,
version.
so what do you compare it to? He's
So I'm
right.
saying we don't have
There's nothing-
comparison.
I'm
Yeah.
saying, did other communities go up, go down, or stay the same if they went electronic?
Well,
That's all I'm
what's
asking.
what, though? The problem is we don't know where the starting point is. We're
I
sending
don't
out.
care about what.
How would they
It's
know?
very
The point is
simple.
they didn't know either.
No,
If
they
they went
might
from
have.
paper.
They might have. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
I don't think there's a way to know if somebody reads something in their privacy of
You
their
have
own
to do a
home.
survey,
That's
right?
it.
We have to
Do
survey.
lots.
I think the point is electronically you can find out if people are reading it and how many people are reading it. As far as bulk mail, you have no idea.
Right.
That's,
Trustee
You can't go
D'Souza.
from-
I think I saw a pen.
I think that one of the indications of how many people are reading is if we put something on the front that says, we're thinking of phasing this out. If you're interested in receiving this via email, sign up here. And if we get nobody that signs up, then it's possible nobody's reading it. And
Or that they don't
We're done.
you know, I mean, and if we get tons of people that sign up, then we'll have an idea that those are the people that are reading it. I don't like the idea of being tracked. I think I read Monarch's and El Dorado's newsletter more, that it's become electronic, but sometimes I just delete it if I don't feel like there's anything that I want to see. I really don't want them knowing that I just delete it or if I read it or whatever. So, but I think it's something that we should put in the very front of it, that we are thinking of phasing it out and not given maybe an absolute deadline, and ask people to sign up and see what we get. Give it a test. That's my 2 cents.
It'll be a good article for the next newsletter.
Yep. Mayor's Court.
Anything
Which
else?
we're working on as we speak.
There we go. All right. So will you give us a status update at the next meeting then? Probably should put it on your agenda to give us a status update at every meeting, assuming that for the next little bit, assuming there's more information. Why don't you continue with your report?
You also had named the newsletter, and this has been on your agenda for a couple of weeks as well. The report prepared by Melissa indicated the process that we've gone through to soliciting solicitations of interest. Then there was actually a voting process online that was included in the most recent, as a supplement in the most recent community newsletter. You have the list of the top 6 vote getters through that process. And the board does not need to make a decision tonight. But what we did is we asked everybody that submitted a recommended name for the town's newsletter to also give a basis as to why. There were some duplicates as to the names, so that was the significance of why somebody thought it was particular. I liked the linkage between the historical aspect of the mining town and the name Superior. So we've included the description that the applicant gave as well as the name that they have. And then, there's no rush in this. It was one of the things that was on our staff work program for the year to improve communications. One of the minor ones was to give the newsletter a name, because apparently many, many years ago, I'm told by somebody that's been here many, many, many years, that it used to have a name. And then for some reason it lost its name, and for the last decade or more, it's been just referred to as the newsletter.
What was the name? Oh, so long ago it's been forgotten.
I couldn't tell you.
Superior Space.
Oh.
All right, so
vote
what
on
do we
this?
need to, what's the next step for this one, just so we can put it
The
to...
7 of you picking one of the 6 names.
Okay, do you want to do that tonight, or do people want to...
Sounds good.
Okay? Anybody jump in?
Can we give us up two?
My favorite one was the Simple Superior News.
I like the headlamp.
Okay, got one for the news, got one for the headlamp. Trustee Sorelli?
Yeah, 2 for the news.
Oh, I like
2 for the news.
Sentinel.
Okay, we're doing well so
Go for
far.
7 different ones.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the superiodical.
Gets
All right.
7 different answers.
So,
Superior News.
Superior News, I either like Superior News or the Superior Sentinel. So.
Yes.
Okay, so we're down to now 2. So what's the...
Superior News and the Superior, so...
Which one?
Superior News
News.
and the Superior Sentinel.
Superior
I only heard 6.
Sentinel.
Is somebody...
I waffled.
All right, so we need to vote on those 2 then. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
So
start
vote.
off.
Yes.
Superior Sentinel then.
Superior Sentinel 1, yes.
Superior News. But I'm okay with either one.
One.
Okay.
Yes.
News.
Superior News.
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 I think we don't run a newspaper, so the Sentinel and the News doesn't make sense to me. Plus, if it's all online one day, and it just gets published whenever, it's not really, it's just there. I would probably go with Sentinel if I had to choose.
I think I
Superior
know.
there.
I'm a Sentinel man
Oh,
myself.
man, it's 3-3.
Well, I'm
Count
a-
up the
Oh,
mirror.
for
Well,
God's sake.
I guess I'd go for the Sentinel.
All right.
So, are we good with that? Will that cause heartburn for the
You're our
losing
swing
one?
vote.
What's that?
You're our swing vote.
I'm a swing vote.
I was
Democracy
thinking-
at work.
I was thinking of the
Superior
attachment.
Sentinel it is.
All right.
Right, exactly.
I mean, Sentinel.
That's a nice alliteration.
If we go
Okay.
newsletter, it could be called the attachment.
All right, so you're still up. Let's do from the work session, which I'm slowly getting my blue sheet from.
Next agenda.
Yes.
Very briefly, we have received a confirmation that Representative Primavera will be in attendance to make a short presentation during presentations. A couple of bid items. We expect we'll have concrete and asphalt repair. This is town-wide replacement of broken curb. There's also some asphalt replacement, significant asphalt replacement under streets that are to be resurfaced. Separate budget items and separate vendors or contractors. We expect that we'll have the bids for the solar panel installation that we talked about 2 weeks ago, where we'll actually be purchasing rooftop installations on some of our smaller facilities and ground mount PPAs, power purchase agreements, for systems that are actually paid for by others where we're buying our power. Expect that will be in the next one. We'll have a recommendation to renew the snow plowing contract with ACC this year, and we'll be prepared to respond to the performance standards that were implemented or put in place before the snow season began. I expect we'll have bids on the town hall message board based on, you picked a preferred design, and we've got some information coming on that. Planning Commission, at their meeting next Tuesday, will hold a public hearing and a recommendation for rezoning of the Resolute property, the old Horizon property on Colton Road, and assuming that they come forward with a recommendation and we can turn it around, we expect that to be on your agenda as well to formally approve that rezoning, consistent with the conceptual plan review that they made many, many months ago. The discussion session at this point, we do have a presentation from Boulder County Transportation Department on their comprehensive transportation plan, taking a short period of time, and our calendar called for a review of Tier 3 streets. You'll remember that last year we had a discussion. The board said, no, the first year of going to a new vendor, we don't want to be changing the rules. We'll review it again. We did not include any money for Tier 3 streets in the current year budget. We specifically took the money out that was staff had included for the purchase of necessary equipment, but we'll be bringing all of that back. I don't expect any new information, but the board said they wanted to review it again after the snow season, and we thought it would be timely as well, especially with the recommendation to renew the contract with ACC. Mayor had requested, and it's been on our list, I have been able to confirm a couple of participants to attend the board's workshop session in June, on June 8th, and one of the items on that meeting will be home rule. Mr. Mamet, and I believe we have an attorney that is special counsel on home rule that will be here to give short presentations and answer questions for the board. A couple of items from the digest. You got the background information that's also included in your agenda report regarding chickens and what other communities have done, how we came up with the recommendation of 3, effectively splitting the baby. Some current information on the community park ball fields, and some bad news about the town center. I don't want to be overly doom and gloom, but the fact that at this particular moment, the prospective purchaser of the 160-acre parcel, or at least the north 80 acres of the 160, has fallen out of contract because of a contract dispute. And we're hoping that it'll get resurrected. Pardon me?
That's something new.
Yeah.
Because it never happens?
Related to that, well, tangentially related to, is there any news on the potential legislation regarding SURA?
The SURA legislation was killed. It got killed. It will not be considered any further in this legislative session. There were a number of bills, but the most significant of which would have required revenue sharing after the 5th year. And again, that died. I would expect it'll probably come back in future sessions, but nothing that we have to appeal to the governor.
So with the solar panels, you said for the building mounted, did you also say for the ground mounted at the utility at wastewater treatment plant?
Water and wastewater treatment plant, the plan that you saw 2 weeks ago called for both rooftop and ground mount installations sufficiently sized to generate a lot more power. But because of their size and the cost of those systems, we're going to be recommending what's called a power purchase agreement, where the vendor themselves is the one that owns and installs the equipment. We agree to buy the power generated from that equipment at a certain rate. The rate differential, we buy it for about 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, less than what we're currently paying to Xcel. But they get the tax benefits associated with the Xcel rebates, the federal tax credits associated with alternative energy production, those kinds of things.
But did it include?
No, at the board's direction, we've excluded. We have a rooftop mount on Town Hall because we didn't want to commit the available adjacent land.
Great. Thanks.
So I expect you'll have 7 rooftop systems and 2 combined rooftop and ground mount.
We've worked out issues with Xcel that we will now be purchasing a wind power generation. Did you do that last week? Okay.
We did initiate those discussions at the board's request with NREL.
Great.
National Renewable Energy, and I have a meeting with them on Friday in Golden to discuss the prospect of either doing something with them or harnessing power currently generated by some of their existing facilities, but somehow trying to come up with a partnership.
Great.
That's all I have.
Anything else? Ms. Carberry, anything from you?
I don't have anything.
Ms. Hardin, anything from you?
Just a reminder.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
Start singing.
Exactly.
Just the next meeting is on May 26th, Tuesday. Not Monday. That's all.
Okay. Trustee Sorelli?
Nothing.
Trustee Rosenfeld?
I just have a quick question. So we passed the ordinance to the building regulations tonight.
Yes.
You guys have a plan in place for putting together new material to educate people coming in and looking for permits?
We've been working on.
And welcome. You
information-
are who?
I'm sorry, Matt Magley, town staff. Information forms. There's a company out there that has information and forms already printed that we just have to modify. So we'll have those in place, plus information for the website, and then information to go along with the permits. The ordinance goes in effect in 30 days, so we'll have that in place by the
Okay. And so if it goes into place in 30 days, does that mean I don't know if we even have any permits we need to worry about? Is it effective from when you filed a permit? Or so anybody who filed a permit but hasn't received a response?
It's
the date of filing of the permit.
Yeah, so it's after it becomes
And it's 30 days after publication, so
Right, yeah.
assuming that the ordinance gets published in Thursday or Friday, 30 days hence.
And are we aware of anybody who might be doing any planning or anything that might get posed by this because they're not going to be able to submit anything within the next 30 days? Just from a standpoint of, I don't want someone to walk in the day after having spent all this money on plans and have to go back to the drawing board.
Sort of grace period.
Well, I'm not asking so much for a grace period. I'm just wondering if there's anybody we've been talking with, like builders, architects, whatever, that we can just be proactive about letting them know, hey, you got 30 days if you want to put a permit in before this goes into effect or whatever. I mean, I don't know how well we track that, but I think that would be a nice thing to do.
Communicate that with Ernie, since he's the one that has all of those contacts.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think it's really important, just to make sure that we've got good, material, training, website presence. And are we going to be tracking in any way the effectiveness of this? Are we going to try and go back to people after they go through the process and see what they think could be improved through surveys or something? I'm just worried, this is a lot more complicated than I think it has been, right, to get a permit. So I just want to make sure that we're tracking the effectiveness of this as well. And that we're thinking about for the first few months, anybody who comes through, maybe a follow-up survey or something like that when they get their final permit issued or something like that. Just a suggestion. That was it.
Trustee Skumas?
I have a couple of things. One is, since the last meeting, there have been at least one, maybe two Chamber of Commerce events that I went to, and it was great to see, for instance, the new Cal Mountain development under one of those and some other things. Both Trustee Rosenfeld and I attended the sheriff's presentation that happened last week, I think, and it was moderately well attended. It would have been great to see more people, but there will be more events like this, and it was really helpful to give some little reminders about, gee, if you've got a sliding glass door, put a dowel in it. If you take photos of all your expensive belongings in your house for your insurance purposes, things like that. And I'm going to be doing a ride along with the sheriff, so I'm pretty happy about that. So, and then so that was really helpful. And Chris Hansen organized that presentation. It was really nice, and the sheriff himself came, right? Pelly, yes, came, and as well as the folks that we see more commonly. So it was great. Last week there was, this last weekend there was quite a bit of activity, and I hit the hazardous waste day, which was the busiest I think we've ever had at the beginning, and I think we had 3 times as much stuff brought in as we normally do, I believe. We had Superior Days, and I staffed a booth and some other folks as well. And we gave away a lot of compost, and I'm really happy about that. And I think we ran out once or came close to running out once, which we replenished. Does staff know how we're sitting right now and whether people need to dash right out if they want it? Or it was very popular when we were talking at the event, when we were asking about, gee, do you have a garden? Oh, yes, I need that free compost.
I haven't asked since Saturday. They said they had plenty at that time.
Okay.
I don't know what kind of penetration they might have had on Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a heavy planting day, so.
All right. Well, so if you're hoping to
It
get that
was
free
ugly.
compost, go down to the yard waste site, which is down on Honey Creek Road, down that hill where you bring your Christmas trees and your holiday trees, excuse me. And it's open Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesday afternoons or evenings.
Wednesday from 4 to 7, Saturday and Sunday, 8 to 12, 1 to 5.
Except lunch, yeah, 8 to 5 except lunch. Right. Okay, then we had a low attendance at the hike, but it was nice to do the hike, and I just wanted to note that that is something I'm going to try to do throughout the summer and have people get more familiar with the trails that there are around here and all the great sites. And one of the things that was, we saw the single tree that's part of the logo and stuff like that, and the superior kind of coal as opposed to the less superior kind of coal. We also had the final consortium of cities codes meeting for the commercial sector, and it was a really great wrap-up, and I think that we'll have a little bit of email stuff that happens after that, but I'll happily send the board a summary of where those results were falling and what we expect out of that. The next coffee buzz for those interested is this Thursday from 5 to 7, and you were going to be there? Yes, and both trustees, D'Souza and Rosenfeld, and others may be there. It's been publicly noticed. It's at Super Joe's. And one of the other things I wanted to note was I've been troubled because we hear citizens bringing issues before the board multiple times, and I'm not sure that a resolution is always either given or heard. And so I just went back, and I don't mean to pick on anybody or call anybody out, but I hear issues being raised by some people over and over again, and I'm not sure that it's feeling resolved. So I went back for the last 5.5 or 6 months, and Gladys, I don't mean to pick on you, but I picked on you this time, and I think I'll look at Mr. Kuffner next time. But I looked at the last several months' worth of comments, and one of the comments that you made in November and again in February was about the design of the original town roads, the mailboxes issue, and the width of the streets and that sort of stuff. I don't know that. I think that the final result is satisfactory, but I'm not positive that you feel that way. I think we've given answers though on that one, so that's one I hope that you felt okay about. You asked about Christmas tree lights and whether those were going to be on par with the rest of town, and I wondered, and I don't know how that one came out, but I know that we had Christmas tree lights out there. The issue of the non-compliance about the karate instruction, I think that got answered and whatever. There were a number of other things about unfair treatment in original town and public rights of way and the streets and also Chapter 11 comments. I think those got answered, and you had made some very positive comments on that. The air quality of the street sweeping that got brought up in April, I think that got raised, but then photographs were given, and it seems to me that's an issue that's settled. But if that's not true, I guess I'd like to hear more about that. You mentioned a couple of other things about home rule and Richmond, but the main one I think that you've brought up a number of times, and I think is really of concern, is this issue of the house on stilts. And that you've brought that up probably 4 or 5 times, and the way that it's been answered is that right now we don't have the authority to enforce anything different than what's currently there. But I think it puts us on alert to try to make changes to the codes that does give us that authority. I don't know if there are other outstanding things that haven't been addressed, but it seemed to me that on the whole most of the things have been addressed, and I just wanted to go back and, sometimes I feel like things have been unsettled or left in the air a lot, and I just wanted to try to see whether or not that was the case, and it seemed to me that most of the things have been addressed, but I see a shaking head. There may be other items. I looked at all my notes from all those meetings, but is there a big one that you don't feel has been addressed?
All right, public comment?
So, yeah, sort of out of order here, but since you were addressed specifically by a board member, it probably makes sense for you to respond to that, and I know that you know your name and address and all that.
I'd just like to close loops, and it seemed that there was a feeling that loops hadn't been closed.
Gladys Forshy, 404 South Third Avenue. No, a lot of them have not been closed.
Can you be more specific?
Go over your list. We'll do them one at a time.
Design of original town roads. The drainage
Coal
is
Creek Drive is crooked.
Well, not Coal Creek Drive, I think the ones in the last 5.5 or 6 months have been the other time.
That public project should never have been done. There was no public hearing on it. Residents did not have input on it. You know, I can go on and on and on and on. And no, I got a brand-new mailbox, and the damn lid still isn't right.
Okay.
So no, it's not settled. The next one?
But the project as it currently exists, let's talk about that. So I agree, I hear you say that the process didn't work to your satisfaction. And I can do some of this outside.
And it's not just my
right.
satisfaction. There are other residents south of
So
the
maybe,
creek.
maybe what we should do is have a meeting then. Because I tried to go back and see what I thought had been settled and what hadn't. And perhaps you and I can schedule a meeting and go over these and see what ones you think still exist as problems.
Fine, because there's some things that I can show you that needs to be looked at, and if you and I have a meeting, we can discuss them, and I can show to you where there is no problems with them.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, when will we have this meeting?
We're not going to schedule it right here. We can schedule it right after this meeting, though.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. I think that's everything. Oh, no, wait. Before we consider the contract for the snowplow that I think is coming up in an upcoming meeting, I'd want to see the stats. So
Oh,
just
yeah.
as a heads up, I'd like to see those stats about, we asked what performance indicators and things, so I'd be looking to see that before the meeting. Thanks.
Okay.
We asked for
And
that
I want
about a
8
year ago.
chickens, not 3. So,
That's the next time.
okay. Oh, so sorry.
Let's see, I think I just had a meeting with Mayor Hickenlooper today with mayors of US 36. It was productive. He had some questions about both the rail and the roadway component. He seemed to be very supportive of bus rapid transit and agreed that our staffs collectively would work together about submitting a joint application for US 36 as well as Denver Union Station, and that we wouldn't be competing against each other in the $1.5 billion stimulus. I forget what exactly the title of. There's so many dollars floating around in Washington, but there's a program that you can apply for, which the criteria will be released next week, I think, that our staffs will be working on in conjunction with Denver. So I thought that was very productive. That's all I have.
And that was something with Dr. Cog as well, that recognizing that Denver Union Station really is a central hub for all of these ones. So what benefits them, in a sense, benefits us as well. So that's a good point. All I had was that since the next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, I do have a work conflict with that, and I could probably get here late. So I may end up missing, if I can't get out of that, missing the work session. But I'll try and get here like around 7:30. So that's it.
Trustee Norris.
I have to agree, actually, with Trustee Skumatz when it comes to when residents come up and share some of their concerns. How do we find out as a board whether those concerns are actually addressed, resolved? How do we get some feedback on that?
One of the elements on the proposed communication plan was for the board to come up with a protocol on how they wanted to deal with addresses from the audience. At times, there's a comment made and 7 responses, and in other times, it's somebody will get back to you. And sometimes somebody will take the lead and respond, and whether that's a staff member or a board member. And sometimes that is satisfactory, and sometimes when it's not the answer somebody wants to hear, you hear it again. And I'll use an example. The most appropriate location for the fire pit. How many times do you hear it? It's not resolved to the satisfaction of the person that raised it, but it's done. We've put it somewhere. It was put there for a reason. The board endorsed that, so on and so forth. I think Coal Creek is another example of that. I don't like it, and I won't like it until it's straight, but it's done. But we need to come up with that practice. Is the podium the appropriate time, location for debate? Or do we want to have a mechanism for responding to that? Who, how, and when? And that's something that the board and I have set out is one of the things in our work program for the year. But it has not been brought to closure. And if it is, question, comment, and response, or is it addresses? I have an issue, I have a concern, I want you to know about it. But one of the things that we've done recently, and within the last 9 months probably, is you'll see after every meeting, one of the typical things you'll see in your Friday or in your weekly digest will be town board follow-up. Here were issues that were raised, not necessarily every one of them, but here were things that were raised, whether they were raised by the board or whether they were raised at the podium, and here's the additional information. Somebody has met with that individual, and here's what was done. Here's the rest of the story. What do we want to do with it? But we've made that effort to make sure that it doesn't just fall on deaf ears, but when there's something that we can respond to, that we've tried to get the board members the information and telling you what we have done.
I've seen the rest of the story a few times, but I guess sometimes if the mayor's not here, but he will say, he will turn to you as a town, would you let us know what happens with that? And the rest of us don't hear what happens with that a lot of times, so I would like to close the loop, just like Trustee Skouma said. I think it's fair to our constituents to do that. So a little bit better communication would be good. I mean,
I think what we had said at that one meeting was that if we had... Can't take you anywhere.
Sorry, I need to finish that.
Was that if we had the answer, that we would respond as we could if someone was at the podium.
If it was quick, yeah.
Yeah, if it was quick, and then something like within 2 weeks, but I don't think we ever came up with a sort of a mechanism for establishing that, so I think that is something we need to sit down and figure out how exactly we get it communicated to everybody that it's has or hasn't. But I agree in the follow-up.
because one of the concerns that I've heard from a lot of people is that, well, we ask questions, we're told we're going to get answers, and there's not enough follow-up or any follow-up. So, and I hear that from a variety of people, not just people in the original town, it's from people from Rock Creek too. So it's, I think it's town-wide. So if we can improve on that, that would be good. Attended the Arbor Day celebrations, which was the day before. It was this beautiful 75-degree day, sunny. It was great. We woke up the next day, it was freezing rain. It was really cold, but it was great. A lot of people turned out, and I was particularly impressed about how many kids showed up. So kind of helped plant trees. We have 15 trees in town, 9, and I can kind of visualize next year have 15 more and continue. So that was really just a great morning, even though it was cold. Also attended the ProStack meeting, and the majority of the meeting was really spent kind of talking about kind of a conceptual plan about additional amenities in the wastewater treatment plant site just adjacent to it. So there were 3 or 4 things. Disc golf was one of the things we discussed, a bike track, a dog park, which has come up, and maybe even a community garden on that site. So that was the majority of the meeting. And the last thing was I missed last meeting here on the 27th. I had an opportunity to meet with Governor Ritter and with a little tag from Town of Superior. So we talked a little bit about local politics. But I was particularly impressed about his passion for the new energy economy, as he calls it. And he feels like this state, the state of Colorado, is on the cutting edge. Even the federal administration is borrowing some of his language that he used, believe it or not, about the clean economy, green economy, both in terms of research and development and wind power and using the natural resources, water, wind, clean air. So that was very impressive. I just meeting him. He's very down to earth. I mean, it's not a political agenda. I'm just sharing just my personal feeling, just meeting him. Very personable, very interested in preserving the natural beauty of this state, and finding more balance between oil and gas and the rest. So I guess it was worth it. I don't know if I'll ever meet him again, but it was just a good meeting.
Did you get him to pledge a whole bunch of money to Superior for improvements in that?
Not quite. I was one of 50 people, so there's a big line. You only have so much time to visit with him, so.
And then the guys in the
Yeah, it's not like that. Yeah, exactly. He had his security team with him.
Trustee Williams?
I have nothing to report, but I did want to ask if we are having a June 9th meeting with the commissioners, county commissioners? We are not? We are? at one point?
Is that on the?
We were polled for that?
Oh, you mean the works, the in-the-field working thing? Or do you mean a meeting with the county commissioners? Like
A meeting with
a
the county
dinner thing?
commissioners.
We've lost that date. We don't.
We don't have that after all.
And we also
Okay.
lost the date of the original date
trail.
for the trail building, and it's
I knew that.
June 20-something, I think, now.
Okay,
But I'll let you know.
okay.
You're back. Just in time.
I think we're all done.
Are we all done? Okay.
There
you are. All right, thanks. With that, let's move on to item number 8, final approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the Superior Municipal Code regarding health, sanitation, and animals. Mr. Randall.
This ordinance, as the mayor just indicated, is up for final consideration, second reading. It's actually the third time you've seen it because of some edits that the board had requested to be incorporated. It was actually on first reading twice. Again, as the staff report indicates, some of the most significant changes, and again, this is a process of recodifying the entire municipal code. We decided to do it chapter by chapter, but there was probably more substantive stuff in this one than in most of our other recodifications. The time limitation for abating nuisances was altered. The nuisance appeal process has been brought in-house so that the board did not need to be the one that would be the ultimate appeal body when it came to appeal assessment of fines. The town's right to enter upon private property has been deleted. We never had the right, but our code said we did. So we've cleaned that one up. And probably the one that has received the most significant discussion has to do with animals. At the board's request, we did add a section pertaining to chickens and goats. We've given you the background on why staff was recommending 3, and I described it as cutting the baby, splitting the baby. We have found instances within the region, Fort Collins and Longmont in particular, that allow 6. We found many communities closer to us that don't allow any, and a couple of that have not wrestled with the issue yet. But we're recommending 3 chickens and a goat would be allowable in a residential area with certain conditions. We were asked, when this was up for first reading, if we'd also consider banning pit bulls, and I think we shared with you at the last meeting that, based on our research, the town, because of our status as a statutory community, we don't have the authority to regulate pit bulls, so we've not done anything on that. And the last one, the first draft that you saw showed that inoperable vehicles had to be kept within an enclosed structure. At the board's request, that they asked that it be liberalized. We have done so. It does need to be screened, but we came up with alternative mechanisms on which an inoperable vehicle for more than 30 days could be screened either by fencing or shrubbery.
Trustee Skumatz.
So I had 2 comments to make about it. On the whole, I think the changes are great. It was suggested to me, and I think it's a great idea, that instead of using the word specifically chickens, that we consider fowl, because that allows ducks, which also make eggs and people like that. That's one change that was suggested to me. And I'd rather have a higher number than 3, more like 6 or 8.
Trustee D'Souza.
Yeah, I'm just thinking geese, though. They get pretty big, and I don't know how.
And very messy.
And mean. So that's so. I agree with ducks.
Chicken and ducks, then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to the man on it.
I know. I'm just trying to think of what we could say. I don't know about having 6 geese in your backyard. That could be crazy. And as far as the number, it really doesn't matter to me. Actually, I was just thinking 4 would be nice because that might be an average family size. So 1 chicken.
1 chicken per member.
One egg a day. I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't cover our family, but so I agree. A little more.
Does 1 chicken lay 1 egg a day? Is that how it is? It's got to lay
They
more.
told me about 6 a week,
Is that right?
5 to 6 a week.
So I would vote for the higher number of chickens. Then.
I have a separate question here. Is that okay?
Trustee Rosenfeld.
This one's more fun.
I agree with the higher number. I would say 4 to 6. The requirement in here about keeping the shelter not less than 15 feet from a property line. So I'm assuming we borrowed that from someone else. Where did that come
Yes.
from?
I think the purpose is so they're not right next to your neighbor's yard.
But I got dogs right next to me that bark a lot. And there's nothing. So I'm really just trying to figure out 15 feet just doesn't make much sense to me on this one.
It's entirely up to you. Yes, that was borrowed language. So that there weren't a bunch of these shelters lined up against neighboring properties and far away from houses. But you can either delete that or change the number of feet. That was borrowed language.
Okay. I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm just trying to think how many properties in town could even do that in a reasonable manner other than, like, if you plunked it right in the middle of your yard. I mean,
There's not a lot of places that.
I don't think that makes sense. I mean, if we're really trying to allow people to own hens, then I don't think we can put a restriction like that in place unless we really knew what the impact was. I mean, 15 feet on each side is 30 feet wide, and I think that would be kind of difficult to accommodate, so. That's my input. I would either take that away, or I would take it away.
5 feet or something.
We'll make it much smaller, so it's not backed up right to a fence, but you can at least have it on the side or something, so.
Trustee Gregorius?
Yeah, I just want to go on the record that I'm in favor of the 6 chickens instead of 3. But can we ever envision, like, Rock Creek residents having chickens in their backyards?
It would be dependent upon whether or not the HOA board would allow it.
There already is.
I seriously, I want to feel how the board feels about that.
I'm all for it.
I'd be fine with it.
I think I'm in
I'd
the
be
minority.
surprised.
I'm in favor of that too in the HOA, but I think that we don't have enough votes for it. But I just want to know how you guys feel about it. If there's a yes vote here, I can take that to the board and see if we can get a yes vote there too. But
Is it?
It's like
Yes.
garbage cans on Sunday. I mean, these are the town's rules. I just go back to that. You know, what others elect to subscribe to, but you're talking about what the town is wanting to impose upon its constituencies.
right, I just
Or
want
allow,
to get a feel how you guys feel about it. Yes, yes.
I have no problem with it.
Okay.
I
Mayor?
suspect there might be some more pushback than we
suspect
think.
No,
Maybe
believe me, there is
checks have
pushback
been-
already. I just want to get a feel if I have your support, I can take that with me. It would help. Okay.
First, we got to pass this.
I know.
Okay, other questions
We're
about
close
this?
to passing it, so.
Trustee Williams?
My thoughts are that I don't like either limiting or even tallying how many per animal. I mean, it's odd to me, 6 rabbits, where'd that come from? Why not 3 or 4? I don't know. It just seems like numbers just coming out of a hat. And I'd rather, in my opinion, I'd rather see some kind of language where, these are allowable, but as far as how many is, I'm not going to be the one writing it, but clearly something that states that, you can't abuse it.
You mean like based on conditions versus
Based on conditions instead of
Health hazard.
how many we're talking
I think the problem
about.
with that is it's so difficult.
That's
That
really
can
difficult.
be
Fine.
unenforced.
I mean, this is the lesser of two evils, I suppose. I mean, I tend to agree in an ideal world, but when you're really trying to sit down and say, well, how do you really define what it means? It's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult. So, I don't know.
Well, and is there any way that we can make this a little bit more general, instead of
First, the
listing
numbers
out
are that
rabbit?
exist in the current code.
Right.
The only additions that we are dealing with, the only numbers that we're dealing with are with those that we're adding to the code. So, in terms of, not a defense, but just an explanation that if it says 6 rabbits and 3 dogs and 3 cats, that's what the rules are today and have been. Not that they can't be changed. And then it comes down to the ability of enforcement. And the reference was made, I have a barking dog that's next to me that's problematic. We can enforce barking dogs, disturbing the peace and the like. We can also, it gives us another, if you will, bullet in the tool belt when it comes to my neighbor's conducting a kennel, breeding pets, and the onus becomes on us to prove it. That either the conditions are unsafe, whatever. This is another one that says there's more than 3 and they're more than 90 days old, it's a violation. We have standing. We might have 3 different ways to get that standing. This is but one of them, and it's a very quantifiable way to get standing. That's why there's some overlap here.
Okay, so if I can't have, a more vague term on how many, could we go more vague since, like Skumat's mentioned, fowl? I mean, can we make this a little bit more vague? And it seems to me that people come forward and say, oh, I want chickens, or I want a goat, and then we put that in. Is there any way to make it a little bit more vague that we're not, I mean, in a month from now, someone else is going to bring something else forward, and we didn't get that in. It wasn't something we considered.
Fowl, you're going to be including geese and possibly.
Okay, well, so maybe that's not it, but, I guess I don't like how limiting this is and how specific. But
Trustee
anyway.
Skumatz.
Well, I've been convinced against the foul language that I've but I am willing to. I wouldn't mind seeing it expanded to geese or to ducks and chickens. But I think it's important to have the numbers because, as Trustee Rosenfeld was whispering over here, it's like, what if you've got the cat lady with 25 cats or something like that? And the numbers, I think, are really important for us to be able to enforce it and have it. This isn't zoned farmland. This is zoned, something else. And so I think just expanding a little bit on what we've already got, which seems to be working relatively well, but recognizing that we need some additional flexibility as standards change, as the economy looks more organic and grow your own sort of thing. I think this is a way to move in that direction without going off the deep end and making it an enforcement nightmare. So that's where I would head.
I mean, we don't have ferrets in here. I mean, you think someone's going to? There is. Okay, I missed that. Guinea pigs. I mean, I'm sure there's a number of things that people will come forward with, and it's not in here.
So, how do we proceed here?
You make a motion, and you pick a number, and you pick a feet, and add any other farm animal that you might want to add to it. So, Trustee Skumatz.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt this ordinance number O-.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Oh, you're
yes.
right.
You're absolutely
You're
right.
right.
Sorry. Yes. Public comment.
George Kuffner, 109 South 4th. I got a problem with this ordinance about the definition of inoperable vehicles on my personal property, private property. I have a motorhome on my property that I don't license plate. It says you got to have a license plate. To get a license plate, you got to have insurance. I don't use this motorhome every year, so therefore I don't insure it until I get ready to use it, period. I think you're pushing the issue here of having license plates on vehicles on my private property. And it's a state law to drive a vehicle on a public road that you have to have it insured and licensed. Therefore, to get your license plate, it has to be insured, and we're talking a lot of money just to have it sit in my yard to have a license plate on it until I get ready to use it.
But, what's the definition?
I think it ought to be deleted out of there, period. I was going to bring it up, but you said public comment later,
Yes.
and this is where I'm coming in, so I think this needs adjustment there, a little more discussion. My vehicles are my personal property. I've had them for years. I got a 68 Chevy, I got an 82 Buick. My Buick needs a lifter put in, but I'm not going to get rid of it because it's an antique. I don't feel I should have to put a license and insurance till I get it done. I have 83, well, it's insured and licensed, but I have a couple other vehicles, the 68 Chevy, a pickup that I've had for 20 years, and I do use it occasionally when my other one goes kaput. I transfer the license plates over to the other one, and I use it.
Makes sense.
That's the way I feel, you know.
Is the screening difficult?
Pardon?
Would
Yeah,
the
you like
screening
the
be
screen
difficult?
right in the main street?
I'm
I live
sorry.
on 4th Avenue, sir.
You
You want me to
I'm
put a
sorry.
fence up right on Fourth Avenue, all the way along Fourth Avenue? Just screen them?
What were you asking?
I live in the trailer park up there on Fourth Avenue.
Yeah, my question is,
From
how
Crow
difficult
Creek,
would it
Crooked Crow Creek, until down to William Street. I think
So
before
the
you
answer
pass
is
this,
that,
this
so the
needs
answer is that it would be too hard.
more discussion.
And just for the record, this hasn't been added. We've actually made the standard for inoperable vehicle storage more lenient by saying they can now be simply screened rather than enclosed.
That's right. This is not a new.
This is not a new
Yeah,
requirement.
this
This is
new.
relaxed, not.
Well, we're changing it, so let's
Right.
change it.
then
Let's
you're
get
asking-
it corrected in this one here. Let's just don't
So that's what
bypass
you
and say,
want.
well, because it was there before, we're going to leave it. This is why you're reworking them, Joe,
Where is it?
to eliminate the things that we feel pressured on.
Well, you can't.
You know,
feel
you
pressured
people
on
are
that.
pressuring
George-
people down.
George, how pressured have you been on that?
Huh?
How long have you had these vehicles?
How long have I had them? Oh, some 25, 30, 40 years.
So it sounds like you haven't been too pressured on it.
Well, I haven't, but I don't want pressured on it either. There's certain circumstances in the original town here that
Okay.
Uh,
Aaron,
you already know what I'm talking about.
well, I know
Please
your
go with
feelings
that.
on that.
And I'm going to bring that up eventually, what our recourse is, but it's not the right time to do it, so I'll just forget it right now. But I will talk to you about some other personal matters, rather than Mr. Rosenfield. But you see where I'm coming from?
Yes.
You know, my vehicles are operable, and I'm just one person, and I do like all the vehicles that I've had, period. And I don't want to run the insurance company and pay $1,000 to insure my vehicles to get the license plate to keep my own vehicles in my own yard. Now, if I take them out of there, I definitely will have insurance, and I will have a license plate on it, just like my motorcycles. And don't laugh about this, it's a 46 Harley Davidson.
You ready
So-
down to see me?
Huh?
You ready down to see me?
Yep. But these type of things, some years I drive it and some years I don't drive it. I've seen times when I had it out of the garage for 5 years. I had that 2 years ago, but I ain't had it out this year. And I might, I don't know, it depends on how I feel. I'm not 25 years old anymore. So I don't think I have to insure that motorcycle and put a license plate on it if I'm not going to ride on the road.
So, George, I mean, one of the things that I'm looking at is that I don't want people, I understand people with cars that aren't operable, but they're collector's items or they're a project that they're going to work on and things like that. But then on the other side of it, there's also people who don't, if weeds are growing up through the tires and, rust
keep my
pools
wheel.
underneath. I'm not talking about necessarily yours, but what I'm saying is that on the other side, there's people who don't want to look at a junkyard next door to them.
I've lived here 70 years, man.
No, I'm not suggesting one way or the other. I'm just asking for maybe a way of, how would we solve the problem then? One of the ideas, like it said in the code before, that you were supposed to have enclosed it in a shed or a garage or something like that. So we said, well, that seems, might be difficult for a lot of people. How about just either putting some trees around it or some sort of a screen? What option would you suggest that we could come up with for a compromise between those two situations?
It ain't bothered nobody yet, so what are you worrying about me putting?
Well, we're not, but
fence up?
this isn't about you necessarily. This is town-wide, so that's why.
I don't see that in town where there's too many problems, and if they do, they talk to the people and they kind of resolve their problems. We don't need to put insurance and license plates on a vehicle we're not using.
Right, and we're
At the
not
present
suggesting
time.
that you do. We're just
Well, I'm
saying that if it's
we need
old.
some more discussion on this ordinance before it's passed. I just don't know what to tell you about a fence, because if I put a fence up, I live back in there, and I go in and out there all the time, and there's other trailers there that people go in and out all the time.
Right.
Some people have put up fences in the alley, 6-foot fences, and they look like hell. But if that's their prerogative, they want to put a fence up, that's fine, but don't force somebody to have to go buy a license plate and insurance just to keep a
Right.
vehicle on their yard. It's an antique. And all mine are, I ain't ever owned a new vehicle. And I don't have none. So that's why I say it needs no consideration.
Be happy to hear other alternatives, but I'm not sure what we do.
Gladys Forshey, 404 South Third Avenue. I want to continue the license insurance situation. I have a fifth wheel trailer parked on my private property. I do not own it. It is there because the person that owns it is out of state. Now, he can't take that off my property onto the street without license and insurance on it. And I just don't think that it's right that that the town tells a resident that you have to have license and insurance on the vehicle. Classic, antique, whatever terminology you want to use in that era. I just don't think that's right, because there are also cars in this town, and I don't know about Rock Creek. There are cars in this town that aren't antiques or classics, that aren't driven, that are only maybe 10 years old, because they have other vehicles in that family that they use. And so I think that particular thing needs to be taken out. My other thing is the right to entry section was deleted, and I appreciate that being taken out. However, on page 1 of the revised edition, in section 7-1-10 under definitions, under authorized inspector, this also needs to be reworded. It now reads, for those people that are at home that don't know what it says, authorized inspector means police officer, building inspector, code enforcement officer, or other officer of the town authorized by the town manager to inspect and examine public or private property in the town to ascertain the nature and existence of any nuisance. That needs to be reworded. That's saying that that an officer can come onto my property. That needs to be reworded.
I think we covered this one in the past. The ability to inspect does not give that person the ability to enter onto your property, but they can observe from the public right of way. Right, that's the interpretation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, it needs to be reworded to say exactly what you just said, because this doesn't say that. So it needs to be reworded.
It doesn't need to be reworded to say that, obviously unless the board wants it to, but right now it does not authorize the inspector to enter on private property.
Trustee Skumatz.
How many words would it take to say that? Because if I were just reading this, I would think that unless it specifically bans them from going on their property, then they would be able to go on. Seems casual reader.
This is a
Casual reader
definition.
me would read it the same way that Gladys read it. I would say that when it says inspect or examine public or private property, that implies to me that means they're coming to inspect it, like.
Well, they are. There's a couple different circumstances here. For one, if they ask permission and you say yes, then they can come on your property to inspect it.
But that doesn't say that in this paragraph.
The second is from either your neighbor's property, if your neighbor authorizes the inspector to go on, and from your neighbor's property, look at your property. So they're walking on private property to inspect other private property, or as Trustee Rosenfeld said, from the public right of way, or from town-owned open space, or from another area that's publicly accessible. That's not, that's what this is stating. If you want to add some clarifying language to say that they're not authorized to enter private property, is that what you're looking at?
Yes, something like, and said inspector does, is only allowed on the property with the permission of the owner, something like that.
But that's not.
That's not right.
true either. We would have to go through
Why not?
because of exigent circumstances or emergency cases or
Or a warrant.
or a warrant.
Oh,
Yes, so we would have to go through and list every single exception.
I see.
So, we could say nothing in this definition shall imply that an authorized inspector has the right to enter private property except as provided by law.
I like that.
That sounds good.
Is that okay?
I can live with that.
Okay,
All right.
let's do that.
I can read, just as long as it's redone.
I don't want to, on my property.
rip that one off right at the top of her head. You must know that sentence quite well.
What are you, a lawyer?
I'm sorry, so any changes that are made, does this have to wait another 2 weeks now then to come back for approval, or what is the process now?
We approve it tonight.
Prove it to me.
Can?
We can with changes if we want.
With changes.
Okay, and so, can there be some discussion then about this license insurance vehicle scenario thing?
Why don't we do that after any other public comment?
I think that's it for
I
public.
think that's, look, seeing one other public person here.
One other
Yeah, no
public.
comment.
All right. Thoughts that people have about either of those issues?
I have a question.
Trustee D'Souza?
On, are recreational vehicles considered the same, under the same exact guidelines as inoperable vehicle? It just, I mean, if somebody is, because I know that's common in Colorado where people have to winterize RVs and things like that they cancel their insurance for, half of the year and things like that. And so how does that affect the definition of inoperable vehicle?
Right now, the absence of a license plate, it raises the presumption that a vehicle is inoperable. I know this is a legal distinction, but it raises the presumption, meaning that if you were in fact cited for having an inoperable vehicle and you came in and said, the vehicle operates, I just didn't license it, then that would be your defense. Now, I'm not saying that that's how you want to do this, because that would require that you get a summons first and then come in and explain yourself. But this only raises the presumption. This is standard language to find a vehicle is inoperable who doesn't have a valid license plate. And the other thing to keep in mind is if the RV or whatever it is screened, then even if it's whether it's inoperable or not, it doesn't matter. So if it's screened or in an enclosed structure, you're fine. So the only issue would be an inoperable or a vehicle without a license plate that's not screened and not in an enclosed building. So that's what this is prohibiting.
And I guess I had a question as far as screening, because if you're going to screen a little, I don't know, Toyota tiny little car versus a fifth-wheel trailer, there's the size of screening is considerably different. So,
And there's standards for screening. Fences can only be so high.
Fences can only be so high. So if they did have it, okay. I'm just trying to think of how we could.
Great segue, because we've dealt with inoperables within about, the last 6 months.
So let me ask the counter from a town standpoint, a code standpoint, legal standpoint. What would be the harm in removing just that one piece, but leaving the rest of the definition in there?
I don't know that there would be any harm. I mean, what it would basically do would be it would be a little bit more difficult to write summonses for inoperable vehicles, because usually a lot of code enforcement officers come up and they look and they can see from the street perhaps that there's no license plate on it, and that's an inoperable vehicle. It's very easy to tell. That's why these are here. Placement of the vehicle on jacks, blocks, chains, or other supports. Well, that's another easy way for a code enforcement officer to look and say, hey, that's an inoperable vehicle. But there's no reason we couldn't get rid of this.
It just eliminates that presumption.
Exactly. Okay. So, I mean, we could still write tickets for inoperable vehicles, and we could still say the vehicle was inoperable because it was up on jacks. It had no wheels. It had no windshield. Whatever the appropriate, reason was.
And
so we could certainly remove this if that's going to create an issue.
And just to be clear, to reiterate, and it doesn't mean that you have to make it operable. It doesn't mean that you have to get a license. All it means is that you have to screen it then.
Exactly.
So
4 options: store it, screen it with a hedge, screen it with a fence, or license it.
Okay.
Those are the 4 options.
Okay.
Or put it in your backyard.
Screen.
Maybe that's de
Yeah.
facto
Screen.
screening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading this.
Right.
So, my comment is that I'd like to think about this a little bit more before making a decision, quite honestly. I don't know, I was hoping that you guys would say, well, there is this downside, but if there isn't, as with all things in the code, we could probably find, 1,000 things that just don't make sense. And, just like...
Seems to me this is only something that affects original town.
Well, that's also true, right? You know, and I remember those forklifts of paper that Al Gore found in our federal government that was just wasteful regulation or whatever. I mean, it just exists and it exists, and you know, how much do you try to get rid of it versus how much you just live with it? And, you know, that's kind of the struggle, I guess. You know,
And in
we're
some
having now.
communities, this is a very valuable tool, the absence of a license plate, particularly parked on public streets. So, you know, in some, that doesn't exist as much here, but in some communities, this really is a valuable, one of the presumptions that they rely on a lot, especially for cars parked out on streets.
But that's a different, we have
Yeah, we have a
regulations, you
separate
can't,
section, right.
you
I'm just
can't
saying
park.
this particular presumption that a car is
Right.
inoperable if it doesn't have a license plate. So it seems like maybe here it's not as a valuable tool, but in some communities it is extremely valuable. So it's
But we have a separate section for addressing that.
You're right, yes.
Yeah, just to make.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so removing it from here wouldn't affect that other section.
No, it would not.
And that is an issue that exists for all of the town, not in public streets. It happened on my street a while ago. So. Okay.
I understand your desire for continue to contemplate it, but I think that removing the license plate probably cures the issue.
I can't think of any downsides. I guess you know, when people say that's standard language, everyone has it. I kind of wonder, well, you know, let me think about it a little bit more. But I can't think of a reason to keep it personally.
It certainly does. We can still write tickets for inoperable vehicles even without this presumption. It won't change our ability to do that.
Yeah. Trustee Skumatz.
I didn't know if there's any more discussion.
Any more discussion?
Make a motion.
Make
I was
a
happy to make
motion
a
away.
motion. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I
Oh,
just
yes.
clarify one thing before you make your motion? When you were talking about ducks and chickens, if I'm going to assume that your motion is going to include something about ducks.
I was going to add ducks, and people could vote it down if they didn't want them.
Okay, my only question would be if we can clarify whether we meant
Female ducks.
no, 3 and 3 for a total of 6, or 6 ducks and 6 chickens, or 6 ducks or 6
I
chickens.
was going to use the word or.
Have you really
I
had
would say
people
that-
asking for
I was going
duck
to use
eggs?
or. Yes. Yes.
I just want to be clear when I draft that
Okay.
because it could be 12 if you do 6 and 6, or it could
Oh,
be.
no. I would say
Total
for a
of 6.
combined total
A
of
total of.
6.
And I don't know if you can have both at the same time. I'm not.
Not my problem.
I don't know.
Well, I'm curious. Just you know, so I researched chickens. I did not research ducks.
I know
So,
ducks are a lot more obnoxious than chickens.
They fly away easy.
You know, so that's my concern. I mean, chickens, I think, are a well-known
But if they're
issue.
cages.
They're, or, you know, hens, they're quiet. You know, I did not research ducks, so.
I had a friend who had pet ducks. They're obnoxious.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I would be a little concerned about adding that without being able to do research. So that would be my input. I'm more than happy to go research it and see, you know, we can tweak it later, I guess, but that never came up to me, so.
Several years ago, I rescued 4 little ducks that were like 1 week old crossing my Casbah, and they were squawking all by themselves.
Make way for ducklings, huh?
On my Casbah going up towards Rock Creek, so I picked them up, put them in my cart in an envelope. Actually, that's how small they were, and we kind of raised them until they became actual ducks, and then they flew off.
They flew, and were they
On
big
their
and
own.
noisy?
No gratitude.
No.
Were they noisier than chickens?
I haven't had chickens. I don't know. No, I wouldn't say they were that noisy, no.
Did they bother you?
They bother my dog. They're very unhappy.
Let's
That's
do
it.
a motion. Let's do a
Yeah,
motion.
motion away.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, sorry.
Why don't you just make a motion to approve it, and then we'll do a bunch of amendments and vote on them
For-
one by one.
Well,
Town of
just,
Superior Ordinance Number 0-9, Series 2009, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior, amending Chapter 7 of the Superior Municipal Code with several amendments. Those amendments would be that we change the number of chickens allowed to be 6, that we delete 7-1-10A about valid license plates, and that we add a sentence at the end of authorized inspector that was previously named by the attorney, and it talks about restrictions about not entering property. And I think that's it, right?
Property line.
Property line,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
right.
property line.
Remove or 5 feet.
I would remove it.
I just.
Remove it, to remove the part about 15 feet from the property line.
motion by trustee Skumatz. Is the attorney clear on where we're at with that?
Yes.
Do you want to reread any of that, or you
I'd
feel
be happy
comfortable?
to if any of the board would like me to.
No, we trust.
Great. Second by trustee D'Souza. Further discussion regarding any of this?
Daryl, I have to live with it.
Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments, that was very helpful. Sorry, I forgot about the public comment, we were just sort of on a roll. All right, that brings us to item number 9.
Add 2 words.
An executive session to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property pursuant to CRS 24-6-402(4) on various real estate transactions, and to consider personnel matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-402(4) on the topic of the annual evaluation of the town manager. Motion by trustee Skumatz, second by trustee D'Souza. Discussion. All in favor? We're in an executive session. Thank you.